most title defenses of every weight class. This is consecutive title defenses. Starting at strawweight, Ricardo Lopez. 21 title defenses? Yeah, no one's going to be beating that, like, ever. At light flyweight, Myung Wo Ya, he made 17 title defenses, and I would like to say from a 15-year span, records were being broken left and right in that weight class. Yet Yoko Gushkin make 15 title defenses in 1980. Then very shortly, Chang Jung Ko made 16 title defenses. Then his fellow countryman and rival, barely 2 years later, beat his record with 17 title defenses. Only current fighter that is on the right pace to even rival such a record is WBC champion is Kenshiro Taraji with 8 title defenses in 4 years. But who knows, we'll see how that goes. At flyweight, Peng Sakalak-Wongjung with 19 title defenses, all as the lineal and WBC champion. Outside of Omar Narvaez with 15 title defenses before moving up in 2010, that record ain't going anywhere. Super flyweight, Kosai Galaxy. Yeah, no one is touching that one. 19 title defenses. Making 10 defenses is an amazing milestone and hard to achieve. Anything after that, your percentage going higher tremendously drops after each fight. It's a hard thing to do. At bantamweight, Orlando Canizales defending the title 16 times. The only fighters in recent history to have come close was Shinsuke Yamanaka with 12 defenses and Asimo Moreno with 10 defenses. At super bantamweight, Wilfredo Gomez, 17 title defenses. The only guy I can name from the past 25 years that came close was the great Vianney Bungu of South Africa, who made 13 title defenses before vacating in 1999. Super featherweight, Todd Morgan. Well, this is an unusual case because officially he made 12 defenses. If you count the newspaper decision as a loss, it's 11. But according to reports, his final title defense before being officially dethroned on paper, he had 16 title defenses. Now if it's 11, Takashi Uchiyama of Japan tied the record. If it's 12, he's still the record holder. If it's 16, he's still the holder, but I highly doubt anyone will be tying it anytime soon. At lightweight, Artur Grigorian making a whopping 17 title defenses. Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be beating that either. Junior welterweight, Julio Cesar Chavez, 12 title defenses. At welterweight, Henry Armstrong. In the weight class at welterweight, it is highly unlikely we will see anyone come close to touching this record anytime soon. Probably not even in my lifetime. The last man to come close at welterweight was Tito Trinidad at 15 title defenses. Junior middleweight, Gianfranco Rossi made 11 title defenses. It's pretty wild. There hasn't been many fighters who have came close to Rossi's record. Middleweight, Bernard Hopkins with 20 title defenses. Golovkin tying that in 2018. At super middleweight, Sven Alt is the record holder with 21 title defenses, retiring in 2004. Joe Calzaghe tied the record after his fight with Mikael Kessler in 2007. At light heavyweight, Dariusz Mikulszewski with 23 title defenses. At cruiserweight, Johnny Nelson with 13 title defenses. Marco Huck also shares the record with Nelson. And finally, heavyweight, Joe Louis with 25 defenses. He has the most in boxing regardless of weight class. As far as the heavyweight division goes, only Larry Holmes was able to come close with 20 title defenses. In recent history, Vladimir Klitschko at 19 title defenses. Joe Louis had been golfing for many years while he was boxing. After retiring from the sport, he decided to move through the ranks of the competitive game of golf, winning the UGA amateur title. He will later be invited to compete in the San Diego Open of the PGA Tour. Joe Louis and other black golfers who he competed with wanted to compete in the PGA as well. The PGA rules at that time was African Americans were not allowed to compete. The sponsors of the PGA event was supposedly unaware of that rule. Joe Louis knew of that rule, but he wanted the PGA to tell him in person to his face, which the PGA told him they cannot compete. This is not the first time Joe Louis has addressed racial issues and demanded it to be fixed. When he was being used as a propaganda tool in the United States military performing exhibitions, he made sure that black soldiers were able to watch his exhibition matches, as at first they were not allowed to. It was only to be viewed by white soldiers, as the military then was segregated. He took the time to listen to fellow fellow black soldiers of the awful, absolute racist conditions that was happening to them. Joe Louis was in touch with Truman Gibson, told him there were problems, it's not right, and please fix it. Gibson contacted DC, DC contacted that general on base, and you best believe it was fixed. You had cases like that in the Isaac Woodard Jr. case, where Joe Louis and others, and most notably Orson Welles, helped spread awareness, making it a national issue. Joe Louis, Billie Holiday, and Woody Guthrie held a benefit concert that drew a crowd of 20,000 people in Harlem and was able to raise in today's currency $133,000 for Woodard. The joint effort spreading awareness nationwide and the disgraceful events that will take place by the corrupt justice system will result in an executive order by Harry S. Truman desegregating the United States military. I highly recommend to look up what happened to Sergeant Isaac Woodard Jr. This situation with golf angered Joe, and he was incredibly vocal about it, stating the president of the PGA is another Hitler barring black athletes from competing. This caught the attention from a famous radio broadcaster, making it a national issue. Now, under a lot of pressure, the PGA committee held a meeting and voted to allow African American golfers and minorities of any background to qualify for, I believe, that specific event. So in 1952, Joe Louis becomes the first African American golfer to compete in a PGA sanctioned event. Thanks to Louis opening up the door, the following day, 7 other golfers of color also competed to qualify. Joe Louis continued to fight for the cause and supporting talented black golfers till ultimately the PGA was finally desegregated in 1961. Since the topic of undisputed champions has been thrown around a lot of recent, the one thing that is quite bothersome is every time when they talk about was the final 3-belt undisputed champion, they mention Jermaine Taylor. They are right, but they are also wrong at the same time. Jermaine Taylor was not the last 3-belt undisputed champion. He is the last undisputed middleweight champion during the 3-belt era. Since Taylor's name is thrown around all the time, the unpopular O'Neal Bell gets lost with history, and unfortunately as a 2015, O'Neal Bell is no longer with us, so he can't come out and speak on this topic. In order to become undisputed champion during the 3-belt era, you must have the WBC, WBA, and IBF title. Jermaine Taylor won that in 2005 when he beat Bernard Hopkins. Taylor, after the first Hopkins fight that took place June 16, 2005, vacated the IBF title, no longer making him the undisputed champion, but he is still the lineal and unified champion. Arthur Abraham fought for Taylor's vacated IBF title December of that year. O'Neal Bell, the IBF champion, fought WBC and WBA champion John Mark Mormack for the undisputed cruiserweight title 2006. Bell stopped Mormack in the 10th round to not only become the last undisputed champion of the 3-belt era before the WBO became fully recognized in 2007 to start the 4-belt era, but Bell is the first undisputed cruiserweight champion since Evander Holyfield in 1988.
It's over. Jean-Marc Mormack on the canvas, and O'Neal Bell is the undisputed cruiserweight champ, the first since Holyfield.
It doesn't matter what Bell did after that, his legacy is sealed forever in the record books for these amazing accomplishments. And it's absolutely sad that since he is not a big name and came from a not so attractive weight class, he doesn't get the credit he deserves. You are not forgotten. Rest in peace, O'Neal, aka Supernova, aka Give 'em Hell Bell. The 23-year-old 30-0 Robert Garcia was making his first defense of his IBF super featherweight title against 12-0 Ramon Ledon. The fight picked up quick after a stalemate first round, when Ledon landed the first significant shot of the fight, then to fall up and knock Garcia down. Garcia will be on the defensive the whole round and survive to go to the third. The third round was rather even with both guys scoring. Ledon looking a bit tired coming into the fourth round, and Garcia took full advantage and began to pick Ledon apart, tying up the knockdown count at the end of the fourth round. Nothing left in the tank, and still bothered by the knockdown in the round before, Ledon had to take a knee and recoup himself from Garcia's early round flurries. After getting up and putting up quite of an effort to get Garcia off him, Garcia was able to pick him off and finish the fight with the KO. The 27-0 David Tua was matched up against the underdog 16-0 Ike Biabuchi. This fight was for the WBC International title. This was one of the roughest heavyweight fights from the last 25 years. A real grinder from round 1 and on. Ike would win the early rounds and Tua would tie things up in the middle of the fight.
Why is he talking about soccer?
Tua did get in a couple of shots, his best shots of the fight so far.
And Ibeabuchi answers with left hooks of his own. Now they begin to trade shots.
But Ike will finish the fight strong to sweep Tua on the cards and win by a narrow unanimous decision.
What a set of power punches by Tua.
And he's hurt. Here he comes. Here comes Tua at the end of the fight once more.
Just as he did against Maskayev and his son Rete, Tua cleaning out the kitchen in round number left hook by Tua. And Tua again and again.
New WBC International Heavyweight Champion.
This was a regional belt unification between 14-0 Lennox Lewis, the EBU champion, and 35-0 Gary Mason, the British champion. Both amazing heavyweights, and there was a lot on the line coming in for this fight on who will be the frontrunner in British heavyweight boxing alongside contender Frank Bruno.
No, I don't think we've got any reason to shake hands. No, I don't want to shake his hand.
But I'll stretch out my hand anyway.
Well, let him stretch his hand out.
Gary Mason coming in as a slight favorite to beat Lewis. Despite not being in the top 10 rankings by Ring Magazine, Gary was ranked number 5 by the WBC. In order for Lewis to move up to get a shot at the title, he must get past Gary.
When I get really mad, I just look at this picture and see a smile on Mason's face holding up the belt. Well, I'm going to wipe that smile off his face and take away that belt because that belt's mine.
Gary getting the better of Lewis early on, landing the first significant shot of the fight in the second round to win it. The third round, it turns into a slugfest with Gary getting much better of the exchanges to clearly win it.
And the bell stops the Mason onslaught, and the two of them have attacked each other.
Though Lewis was getting outpointed and outpunched by Gary, Lewis was landing the jab at a high percentage to where Gary's eye was messed up completely by the final 30 seconds of the third. As the eye worsens, it forces Mason to be more on the offensive, pressing the fight, expending energy as Lewis slowly pecks away to where Mason's eye is in awful shape. In round 7, Mason, now very desperate, knowing the fight may come to an end, lets out one big flurry on Lewis where both guys are going toe-to-toe.
This is going to have to be brought to an end in a minute, but Mason is having one last desperate go in round 7.
Once the first initiated hold came in after Mason's flurry, the ref got a good look at the eye during the break and immediately waved the fight off. TKO win for Lennox Lewis. Due to an unfortunate technicality, this fight was not for the undisputed title. This fight was between the obvious best in the weight class, 43-0 Joe Calzaghe and 39-0 Mikkel Kessler. Calzaghe held the WBO title, making his 21st defense, and Kessler was the WBC and WBA champion. Early to mid-rounds, it was even, both guys getting the best of each other. Calzaghe made game-changing adjustments to take over the fight and beat Kessler by unanimous decision.
The fighting pride of Newbridge, Wales. Now the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world.
24-0 Sean Porter, the IBF champion, making his second defense against 32-0 Kell Brook. Porter ranked at number 4 and Brook at number 5. According to December 31st, 2013's rankings, Brook was ranked at number 4 and Porter was ranked at number 6. Porter did beat Devin Alexander for the IBF title in December, but the fact that Brook was ranked at number 4 and had not lost yet, his rankings should not have been affected to drop coming into 2014. This fight was a very rough nail-biter for the two. Not a pretty start for Brook, as Porter's rough style caused a clash of heads in the second round, cutting Brook. Porter himself will get cut later in the fight. Though Porter was getting the better of Brook in the first half, Brook started to take over in the second half as Porter started to tire out, making the fight incredibly close to where who wins the championship rounds wins the fight. Since Brook is not American and he's fighting Porter in his backyard of the United States, the UK commentators coming into the 12th round expressed their lack of confidence that Brook will not even make it out with a win on the cards.
The
feeling Kell Brook's not going to get it here, but it's a performance of comparable quality.
Kell Brook will win by a majority decision to become champion. The Sky Sports crew was absolutely shocked that their guy was given a fair shake on the scorecards to get the victory.
And the new
It's Kell Brook! It's Kell Brook's night! And just look at that reaction! Astonishing performance!
67-0 Julio Cesar Chavez against 44-0 Alberto Cortez. Rather entertaining when it lasted. Cortez was landing, but his shots had no effect on Chavez, and every shot that Chavez landed moved Cortez. And in the third round, Chavez lands a brilliant combination, dropping Cortez. Cortez was unable to make the count, and Chavez goes 68-0.
Vuelve a meter la mano derecha y está liquidado. Que canta que dice que no más. Segunda defensa de Julio César Chávez en el Palacio.
Hassam Endam pretty much fought all of his career in France. After some strange events under the WBA, as he was an interim middleweight champion, I just can't find any notes where and why he didn't get a shot at the WBA title, but okay, whatever. Endam got the opportunity to fight for the WBO interim title against undefeated Ukrainian Bursak to win wide on the scorecards. Now the events here that take place would also be odd. WBO orders Pirog versus Endam, but Pirog goes ahead to set up a fight with Gennady Golovkin. Pirog is stripped of the title, but instead of fighting someone for the vacant WBO title, Endam was just given it, and now Endam is set to face Peter Quillen on his US and Showtime debut in New York City. This was also the first boxing event held in the newly built Brooklyn Barclays Arena. Both Quillen and Endam came in undefeated with the identical record of 27-0. This will be Quillen's best performance up to date, dropping Endam not once, not twice, but 6 times. Somehow Endam was able to lose by a 12-round unanimous decision, which you could say that's somewhat of a win there, but he didn't come out with that W. Adonis Stevenson fought all of his fights in Canada, moving up the ranks and picking up the WBC regional belt, being ranked number 11 by the WBC. So from the mid-2000s and on to the 2010s, the best fighter, and you can still say the best today, to test your fighter out from 168 to 174 was against Darrell Boone. Darrell is equivalent to Emmanuel Augustus. He is the ultimate journeyman, the ultimate gatekeeper of those two weight classes. To give you a list prior to this fight, Darrell had already faced Andre Ward, which he dropped him, Enrique Ornelas, John Pascal, Curtis Stevens, Brian Vera, Craig McGuinn, Arislandi Laura, and Edwin Rodriguez. Please keep in mind, I name all these fights in order, and from Craig McGuinn to Edwin Rodriguez, Boone fought all of them barely 1 month apart from each other. 3 fights in 3 months against blue chip prospects. Holy crap. Boone was literally training himself at the time when he was called on a 2 weeks notice to fight Stevenson. Boone took the fight just because he knew Stevenson didn't have what it took to win. In Boone's own words, he stated, by him being 13-0, I just figured he couldn't be that experienced, so I took the fight. I didn't know nothing about him, end quote. Now this fight was on Showtime, and no such broadcast footage exists, but very low quality home video did, which was smudged off the internet for many years. Copies of that home video was re-uploaded, but it was in even worse quality. Now, a little over 4 years ago, the home video would resurface, and this time being in far superior quality than what was originally uploaded back in the day. So Boone does what he's good at, which is giving fighters rounds and helping promotions find out if that fighter is ready to move on up. Let's roll the piece of this lost media. Now, in the world of boxing lost media, a particular fight many hardcore boxing fans have been trying to search for is Darnell's fight with Sergey Kovalev. Now, I was told by Evan Holyfield in a comment section of a post, this tape exists, and he saw this tape with his own eyes. Now, that is a fight I would love to see. After Robinson won the middleweight title in 1951, he would have 2 non-title bouts to make an announcement saying he is entitled to a vacation and he will be doing a European tour. So pretty much it was a lot of partying in between 6 fights in less than 2 months. Robinson's fight in Germany ended in a disqualification in the second round for an illegal kidney shot. After the fight, the German Boxing Commission swiftly overruled it to a no contest. After the 6th fight in Italy, the 7th fight was a title fight against the British and EBU champion Randy Turpin from Great Britain. Turpin would shock many, upsetting Robinson to become the middleweight champion. There will be an immediate rematch, and the rematch would take place in New York, making it Randy's first fight in America.
I can't tell you just how much I appreciate this presentation and being back here with you. Well, I just don't know what to say really, but when I do go to America, I can assure you that I shall be 100% fit when I go in the ring, and I'm confident myself that I should return to England, still the middleweight championship of the world.
Well, so far so good from Randy, in which he had cut Ray and was up on the scorecards. The ref was threatening to stop the fight due to his cut. Ray told the ref to give him one more round, in which he did. Ray would stop Randy that very same round to reclaim the middleweight championship. Referee Eddie Eckert was pretty much non-existent in this 2-round war. The only time you see Eckert was when both fighters needed to be split during a clinch after they stopped trying to fight it out or tried to hit with a free hand. Jackson being dropped in the 2nd round with plenty of time for McCallum. Jackson taking in many shots but throwing back. Coming towards the final minute, things would change. Jackson would get hurt and take many unanswered shots from McCallum, forcing Eddie to put a stop to the fight. High stakes fight for the WBA interim title, back and forth action, both guys taking a lot of damage. Raul Kais letting both guys put in work. Lara being dropped twice after the 2nd knockdown and Angulo was on him. Angulo pushed off of his elbow. In some crazy cases, during a high stakes situation, the ref will put a halt to the fight.
Not in shape, maybe to take those shots, and I think shape is part of it. We don't need this now. I mean, this is a key moment of the game. What is he doing? I mean, he's sending them back to their corner. To a slew corner. Hatton was in dire straits there, and they're tying a shoelace. They are tying a shoelace.
Raul warned Angulo for the blatant elbow without taking away from the fight. The very next round, Angulo was hit by a shot that had a really bad effect on him, causing him to turn his back towards Lara. In this situation, the ref immediately has to stop the fight, and Raul does not hesitate to stop and protect Angulo from further injury. It was a high-stakes fight as Hasagawa was a long-reigning champion who was possibly siding a fight with Nonito Donaire. For almost 4 rounds straight, it was all Hasagawa, just your usual Hazumi fight. Till the final 10 seconds of the 4th round. Montiel caught him with a perfect shot. Right here, there is 5 seconds left at this point. Cole had a hard decision, and he made the right call here. Hasagawa's arm is tangled on the ropes, and his free hand is trying to guard, but he's tangled up, preventing himself to be covered. This is free real estate for Montiel, as he's getting all the free shots in, forcing Cole to stop the fight right at the 2-second marker. Cole knows it's the last 10 seconds, but he has a guy unable to defend himself, getting hit with flush shots by one of the hardest punchers at bantamweight. After the fight, Hasagawa had to immediately undergo surgery, as during that exchange, he had broken his jaw. Bill Clancy had his hands full this night. At the end of the 2nd round, Jose hits Andre well after the bell rang. Clancy yelled and gave Jose a stern warning not to do that again.
I like that warning. I like that warning from the ref. Very important.
6 rounds later, Jose hits Darrell way after the bell once again, this time having damage, dropping Darrell. Clancy asks Darrell to get up and if he's okay. Darrell did not get up, though he said he was okay. Clancy obviously did not like his response, got the doctor, talked to the commission officer to tell him what happened, and will rule the fight a disqualification.
Within that split second, that it was so illegal to have a disqualification as opposed to going to the scorecards.
No, that's a blatant foul. There was an earlier round where he hit him a little late, and I warned him. He was clearly warned, and his corner was warned. Andre Darrell wins the fight by disqualification due to being knocked out after the round.
Bill, thank you.
The fight that started off this list is Vargas versus Titsworth. Titsworth kissed Vargas in between a clinch, which led to Vargas striking him in between the break. The ref, seeing both fouls take place, immediately took action.
I got timeout. This fighter, unsportsmanlike conduct, kissing that fighter. You do not kiss a fighter. 1 point. 2 points, intentional. 2 points. Okay? 1 point for him hitting back. 1 point. 1 point. Okay? 2 points.
2 points for kissing.
You're gonna get disqualified. Got it? Because you're unsportsmanlike. Now box. This is your last chance, and I'm disqualifying you.
This fight was not aired on HBO. This was during the untelevised card. But the HBO team was doing rehearsals before the broadcast had started.
There it is. Indeed, he'd kissed Vargas behind the ear, which prompted Vargas to knock the living shit out of him. And a lot of guys will do that when you kiss them.
Yeah, I think I would react the same way as well.
Reasons why the commentary was out of the ordinary from the crew.
And though kissing has been ruled out, Titsworth shows he can still hug. As he's been holding Vargas for the early part of this round.
With a name like Titsworth, he's lucky he didn't feel him up. I wonder how many points come off for that move.
3 points.
A lot of people were angry with the Taylor stoppage and didn't believe Steele's word.
Richard, you describe the end of the fight and why you stopped it.
Well, Larry, I stopped because, Melzer had took a lot of good shots, a lot of hard shots.
And I asked him twice, are you all right? Are you all right? And he could not continue.
I don't care about the time. When I see a man that has enough, I'm stopping the fight.
Well, Steele was telling the truth, and this fight here clearly shows it. Tatayoshi, though was getting outclassed by Sahapram, did not show any sign there could be something wrong with him, especially on the broadcast. Sahapram lands a couple shots that really did not look all that hard compared to what he landed earlier, and Steele jumps in very quickly to stop the fight. Tatayoshi, who seemed to look perfectly fine, then fainted, Steele catching him in his arms, saving him from a brutal fall to the ground. This just shows to you that he actually does care for the fighter's well-being, and it's not because of politics due to a very powerful promoter. Jack Reese had his hands full this night between two fighters who are notoriously known for fighting dirty. Even HBO stated once the bell had started, Reese is in for a lot of work, and they were right. Both guys equally were fighting dirty, and Reese equally warned both guys.
Left-handed, so he's leading with a real strong shot, that power jab.
Unfortunately, both guys did not respect Reese's commands and kept on with the foul play, to the point Reese was clipped by a punch while trying to break up a hold. Reese, who was absolutely disrespected by both fighters, momentarily put a halt to the fight, took 2 points off from both fighters.
Go in that corner. Go in the corner. Time out. All right, Jack Reese is going to try to get control of the fight. I got hit. You got to take a second.
The ref said he got hit.
I got intentional fouls.
Put into the commission for the two to get fined if the fight is waved off to further fouls.
I am not
going to allow this. You're instigating a lot of this, and I'm not putting up with it. Not only that, you're hitting me, okay? Andre, I'm not going to allow this, okay? This is what I got. Stay right there. We're not done. Stay right there. 2 points. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Stop. I know, relax. I'd like to fine both of them. You determine what it is.
Now you're asking why Jack took 2 points away from both guys. He is making a clear statement. There will not be another point deduction. The next action will be a disqualification.
Okay, I just want you both to know I've recommended fines. If I have to disqualify you guys, nobody's getting paid. We understand each other? We understand? Okay, knock this shit off. Okay, we're back.
After all that, Ward and Rodriguez cut that shit out and actually box clean for the rest of the fight. And that's what I call putting order back into the ring. This fight here really could have ended bad. Valero gets cut early in the first round. Then in the second, the worst of the worst will happen. He gets caught with an elbow, which opened up a huge gash on his forehead. Now we have seen plenty of situations where something like this happens, a foul which turns into a cut, but it's ruled a punch, which if the fight is stopped, it's considered a technical knockout. Despite Cole not really being in the best position to notice that it was an elbow, he used great common sense analyzing that there is no way a punch would have created that and had it officially ruled as an elbow. Replays from a much better angle clearly showing it was an elbow that landed. WBC rules whenever a foul like this is committed, it's an automatic point deduction. So it could be either a 10-8 round in Valero's favor or a 9-9 round. Despite the cut looking really bad at first, it clotted up surprisingly fast, and Valero was able to fight on comfortably to stop DeMarco in the 9th round.
Retiring on his stool, the champion continues to reign. Edwin Valero, another successful title defense.
Despite Monroe getting rocked, dropped, and saved by the round, Monroe would put up a spirited performance against Golovkin, showing he is still in the fight.
And Monroe actually would do better if he's just
Constantly. Minor upset already. That
we saw against Daniel Gill. Gennady would walk through those little punches.
Those are big shots Monroe's hitting Golovkin
That's
with
exactly
speed.
right. That's exactly right. He got to do that.
He may not make it through the rest of the fight, but he certainly earned Golovkin respect.
He is flying Gennady's head in this round.
Golovkin would crack through Monroe in the beginning of the 6th round to get dropped. Monroe underestimating his legs and the timing to get up and would just barely make the count, giving Monroe a chance in this title fight to continue, in which Monroe later changes his mind that it's maybe best to retire from the fight.
Man, the hook can hurt even worse. He's out of here.
Third knockdown. There were 2 knockdowns in the second round, and now he knocks him down for the third time here in the 6th.
7, 8, 9, 10. You just beat it. You just beat it. You gotta move faster. You want to continue?
His legs are gone.
You want to continue?
His legs are gone. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Willie Monroe.
If you followed the backstory, there was a lot on the line for both guys. Cunningham would brutally get knocked down towards the final 30 seconds of the 5th. Cunningham gets up before 8. Referee Steve Smoger makes a quick check if Cunningham is okay by making him come forward, all within a reasonable time because this is a moment for Mansour. There's not much time left on the clock, and he's not going to rob him from that. Mansour makes a mistake of not remaining at the opposite corner of the ring till the fight is in play. He was right behind Smoger, which is why you see him backing up Amir. Amir ends up dropping Cunningham, and the count begins at the 9-second mark. Cunningham gets up at 6 seconds.
Mansour is ready, trying to finish it. He's going right back at Cunningham. Cunningham trying to stay up. Cunningham is down in the corner.
Smoger checks if Cunningham is okay. Knowing the round is about to end, he decides to not stop the fight, give Steve the benefit of the doubt that he will be able to fight the next round, but warns him if he gets knocked down again, he will stop the fight.
Saved by the bell. Round 5 is coming to an end. Will Cunningham be able to come back for the next round? Steve Smoger talking to him, and that is the end of the round.
Cunningham would go on and pull off a huge comeback, seal the win with a knockdown in the final round to earn an inspiring decision on the scorecards. A lot of back and forth action, and despite Tanaka being knocked down in the 5th and 6th round, it is still very competitive, in which Tanaka will clearly win the following round. In the 8th, it looked like he was winning that round as well, just by a hair, and he was caught again by Yoka. Though this shot did not drop him, it buckled him, and referee Michiaki Someya, without hesitation, rushed over to stop the fight. The viewer at home would think this looks like a premature stoppage, but little they know, Tanaka had briefly passed out and Michiaki had to carry him till he regained consciousness. You can see Tanaka's legs go completely limp and Michiaki doing his best keeping him from dropping to the canvas. Amazing stoppage by the referee. Japan has never had a middleweight title holder before, like ever. Besides Hirota Murata having Takamura's look pat down, for Shinji Takahara, when it comes to power, yes. When it comes to personality, Shinji just takes the cake here. He came from that delinquent bad boy era that most Westerners would only read in mangas and see in animes, in which the man had a very successful show after retirement where he was reforming delinquents by having them practice boxing and fighting in the amateurs. So the tale of this fight, Castro was on an absolute roll in the early 90s. After his loss against Roy Jones Jr., he would rack up a 27-fight win streak. Those wins would include a big win against Reggie Johnson, John David Jackson, and a Fight of the Year candidate, and a rematch win against Reggie. Castro had practically beaten all the top fighters at middleweight at that time. Coming into 1995, he was ranked number 2 in the world by Ring Magazine, right under the G-Man, Gerald McClellan. So when this fight was made, it was simple that Shinji was the heavy underdog, based on the fact that no one outside of the Pacific knew who he was. He held the OPBF title, but since it wasn't the best of eras in the Pacific region for fighters from Asia, welterweight and above, it was a lot of trouble finding Shinji fights. The 23-year-old Shinji gets the dream shot at the title and the privilege of having it in his backyard in Japan. Since there was obviously a promotional bid to where the fight is held, Shinji's side won. There was quite a bit of money and faith that Shinji was going to do the unimaginable of becoming Japan's first middleweight champion. Well, what can I say here? The 23-year-old delivered, putting on one of the greatest one-fight performances. Even when he was clearly winning the fight, he continued to put on a show in the championship rounds, as if he was down in the scorecards. Castro in disbelief, team in utter shock. Shinji sweeps Castro in the scorecards to win the WBA title to become Japan's first middleweight champion. It's also a very good thing Shinji was still fighting as if he was losing in the championship rounds, because Manuel Gonzalez had to fight 114-116, which is just mind-boggling. This fight is really almost identical, except the Jason fight is the first round of the rookie tournament, and this is for the Japanese title. Yuji Gomez is an American living in Japan, fighting professionally like Ozuma. Yuji and Jason are known for their sheer strength and power, blowing through guys with their punching power and intimidation, and they're both excellent hookers.
どうもありがとう everybody. Thank you.
Now, just like in the Ippo fight, what shocked Jason is what shocked Gomez, and that was a fighter who was willing to press forward and trade shots with him, making it a barn burner between the two.
Whoa! They're hitting blow for blow! 17 KO のうち1ラウンド KO 勝ちが5回。さあ目を離せない大丈夫。
Aichi getting the better of the exchanges, but he's really playing with fire here, as Yuji, after being stunned, was able to crack through Sugama, stunning him before being saved by the bell in the 5th. Aichi would fight the next round much smarter, and he would crack through Yuji with not the hardest shot of the fight. It seemed to be a broken orbital, going by how much his eye would close after this. Yuji took a knee and was forced to retire from the fight. Takashi Uchiyama versus Takashi Mira is a bit of both Ippo versus Sendo 1 and 2 combined. Only difference is this is for Uchiyama's WBA super featherweight title, and in Hajime no Ippo this was for the Japanese featherweight title. The start of this fight was rather even, Uchiyama landing and Mira landing well. Mira's face at the end of the second already showing signs of bad swelling, and Uchiyama at the start of the third is cut on the eye. This causes both fighters to fight more aggressive than usual. Uchiyama will get hit by the hardest punch in his career, getting floored to the canvas. Uchiyama with his back turned, shaking off the cobwebs. The ref gives him a hard slap to the arm to get his attention on the count. Soon as the fight resumed, Uchiyama is clocked by Mira. I feel like the very subtle step back he did was just enough to avoid getting floored again. Uchiyama is standing his ground and just nearly misses a shot that would have floored Mira. The final 10 seconds would turn to a toe-to-toe battle. As the tensions are high, a bit of comic relief happens as Mira walks to the wrong corner and sits in Uchiyama's stool by mistake. He's shooed away by Uchiyama's corner as Uchiyama couldn't help to let out a chuckle. The following round, both guys are letting bombs go. Incredibly even, and Uchiyama would just nearly steal the round in the final 10 seconds. Mira would once again make the mistake of going to the wrong corner. Just as Uchiyama is stacking up a lead, in the following round, finding his range and putting together combinations, Mira would find his way back in. Uchiyama would shake it off and continue to mount up the offensive, landing big to keep Mira off him to where Mira is beginning to show signs of wear and his eye is really starting to look bad. By the point, Mira can't see the jab coming, thus causing it to land where his eye is swollen, and for Uchiyama, his cut has far worsened to where the ref paused the fight for the inspection of him rather than Mira. The 8th round being brutal for both guys, Uchiyama and Mira landing big. Mira would hit the wall in the final minute, and Uchiyama would take full advantage, stealing the round from Mira. The doctor would examine Mira's eye, and he would fail the exam, resulting in a TKO victory for Uchiyama. After this fight, Uchiyama would rise through the ranks all the way to number 1 by Ring Magazine. Mira would pick up the WBC title, make his way back up the rankings to number 2. By 2015, there was serious talks of a rematch, and their fights just days apart from each other, and May was a perfect setup, both guys obliterating their challengers. Mira was the first. And then it was Uchiyama, in which Mira was the guest commentator for that fight. This would have been the first unification for the Ring Magazine titles since Manny Pacquiao defeated Juan Manuel Marquez in 2008, and it would have been between 2 Japanese fighters. Unfortunately, an agreement never came into fruition, and the highly anticipated rematch unification never happened. Japan versus Thailand, one of boxing's most underrated, unseen rivalries. So Miyata travels to Thailand to fight former featherweight champion Jimmy Sitfar. Jimmy was hyped up to be the next Kosai Galaxy, Kosai being the greatest boxer to come out of Thailand, holding the super flyweight record for title defenses, making 19 of them before retiring from the sport with a record of 47 wins, 1 loss, with 41 knockouts. He is the only fighter from Thailand to be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, which is beyond criminal, as there is a handful who should be in the Hall of Fame by now. Historically, Japanese fighters or foreigners going to Thailand in a high-stakes match has been bad luck.
Listen, it's all about Jimmy. Talk about a hometown advantage. Even if there were a few people up there cheering for me, it wouldn't make any difference.
The fights are held during the daytime, the arenas are hot, and you can tell just from Miyata's fight, he was sapped and beaten trying to look for a hole-in-one.
It's been Jimmy all the way so far!
In which he barely made it out, getting the 1-punch win to be assisted by his team out the venue.
Would you look at that guy? He can barely walk out of here.
And he beat Jimmy Sisfar like that, it doesn't seem right.
In reality, this hole-in-one does not happen, and I have 2 examples. Challenger Daisuke Naito would make a trip to Thailand to challenge WBC and lineal flyweight champion Pongsakalak Wongjongkam. Wongjongkam would knock him out in 34 seconds, making it the fastest knockout in flyweight history. The original record was set in 1929 by Frankie Gennaro. Wongjongkam still holds the record till this day, as well as the flyweight title defense record, defending the lineal and WBC title 17 times before being dethroned by the very same man he knocked out in 34 seconds. Yes, Naito, back in title contention, earned a rematch, then a 3rd fight which Naito would win, and the 4th fight would end in a draw. The second example is Sursikit Sor Rungvisai versus Yota Sato. Sato was a very tricky sharpshooter that had dethroned Sursikit's gym mate, WBC champion Suryan Sor Rungvisai. This was Sato's 3rd defense of the title since dethroning him, and he had made the trip to Sursikit's backyard to defend it. I don't think there was a round you could have given Sato. It was like he was tired from the opening bell and on, and it was a round by round pummeling till the fight was stopped in the 8th round. Mexico versus Japan, very underrated rivalry with a deep-rooted history. Both Date and Nakazato, world-class fighters, both this was their last chance at the world-class level fighting for a title. His opponent, one of the earliest Eddie and Chepo Reynoso champions, Oscar Larios. Larios would mostly win the early rounds till the third, where Shigeru cracked Larios, sending him on the defensive. Larios hurt bad, but he would get a break by the ref. This gave Larios the extra time to recover, and when the fight resumed, he gets the best of Nakazato, evening up the round. And this is where Larios, like Martinez, would put the beat down on their guy. Nakazato would get cracked and drop twice in the fifth. The first knockdown was counted as a slip. Nakazato, though throwing back, would barely make it out of the round. This goes back to the Date fight, where Date is hanging on by a string to come out the next round and land his best punch to be countered and put away. In reality, Nakazato lands his best shot and was able to follow up, giving Larios all he can handle. Larios would go on to outbox Nakazato, so straight up the most insane thing would happen in the final 30 seconds of the eighth. Nakazato would catch Larios with a hook coming in. Larios is completely out of his feet. The corner got on the ring apron as if they were about to stop the fight. Nakazato thought he had heard the bell ring and proceeds to go back to the corner as 10 seconds burn away to where he could have finished Larios off before the bell rang. The commentators can't believe it, and surprisingly enough, Nakazato will get another chance at the end of the 11th round. This would start one exciting 12th round to end the fight. Despite all the great moments by Nakazato, the scorecards would be ruled wide in Larios' favor, 2 out of 3 judges scoring it 116-110. One judge had it the more appropriate 114-110. Despite the controversy in the 8th round and the overall excitement of the fight, this would spawn a rematch where whatever was left of Nakazato in the first fight left, and Larios would cruise to a wide unanimous decision. He was actually given another opportunity to fight for the WBA title, which was stopped in the 6th round. Nakazato retired from the sport afterwards. If Ippo and Miyata would have met each other in the pros instead of sparring, this would be the matchup. This fight was between two up-and-coming stars in boxing. Whoever won this fight was on a short road to becoming a huge name in boxing and to getting a title shot. Inoue with the record of 3-0 and Taguchi with the record of 18-1. This fight was for the Japanese light flyweight title, and I'm hoping since you've watched the anime, this title and this fight is a big deal. This would be Inoue's toughest fight up to date.
ところに今ジャブを合わせさあ右にキック田口のパンチジャブがいいですよね非常にジャブがいいですね動く位置もいいですよねさあただここは接近戦だ田口が接近戦に臨むさあ井上これつけるかさあボディそして下がらすというシーンが井上やるさあここでパンチだが
Highly contested battle, but Inoue would have Taguchi's number in the later second half and win by unanimous decision. In their own right, Ippo and Miyata would go their separate ways and achieve quite a bit in the sport. The very same with Inoue and Taguchi. Inoue would skip flyweight, move to super flyweight, and beat the #1 fighter in that weight class, dominate the division, then move up to bantamweight to rule the entire weight class, winning the WBC, IBF, WBA, and ring titles, earning #1 pound for pound in the rankings, becoming the first Japanese fighter to do so, as well as the first to make it on the cover of Ring magazine. Taguchi, in a year after his loss, would become the WBA light flyweight champion, making 7 defenses before unifying it for the IBF and Ring magazine titles against Milan Melindo to become the legitimate champion in that weight class. Hiroyuki Yoshino, a well-seasoned and respected Japanese and OPBF welterweight champion who had one run at a world title shot back in 1993. In the turn of the decade, he had moved up to junior middleweight and picked up the Japanese title. His first defense would be against Crazy Kim. Crazy Kim, also known as Toshiharu Kaneyama, is indefinitely crazy. He most certainly lives up to the name. Besides the fight starting crazy before the bell, this was definitely something straight out of Hajime no Ippo. We can also say Yoshino is a well-seasoned vet from Ippo's gym fighting a deranged up-and-comer. So since I covered this fight in a previous video that not a soul watched, it was one of my favorite pieces, so I will recycle the recap portion. Champion Yoshino Hiroyukiと、そしてチャレンジャー金山敏治です。さあ1ラウンド序盤から打ち合いになっていくのか。とにかくおっと左のパーキスト逆に左ジャブ。So in the first round, Crazy Kim delivers and cracks Yoshino, dropping him. Yoshino barely makes it out of the first round while still fighting on. From the second round and on, it just turns into a... For the most part, Crazy Kim is getting the better of the exchanges. Third round, Crazy Kim cracks Yoshino again, but since he aggressively pushed him down after cracking him, it was counted as a slip, and Kim was warned for the push, giving Yoshino time to recover. In an odd exchange, before the round ended, Kim gets tripped up and Yoshino clocks him before he fell into the canvas, the ref counting that as a knockdown. Back and forth action, Yoshino in the closing of the 6th round, hurting Kim, thus causing Kim to come back, resulting both guys to go toe-to-toe to end the round off. The 7th round, Kim for the most part wins the first half, then to get absolutely exhausted out of nowhere to where Yoshino is on the verge of stopping him in the final minute. Yoshino tries to capitalize in the 8th round, then to punch himself out to where Crazy Kim rallies, then to win the exchanges. 9th round, both guys are too exhausted to do anything, but in the final 30 seconds, they immediately came out of nowhere throwing bombs at each other. Though Kim is getting the better exchanges, he's so tired that he falls to the canvas out of exhaustion. Not once, but twice, as Yoshino is trying to win the round. Now, I don't know the official scorecards, but Kim may be up a round or two in the fight, and Yoshino needs to do something big to win. Right at the opening bell, Yoshino catches Kim with not really his biggest shot, but Kim was so exhausted that he completely lost his balance upon impact and got knocked down in the process, in which the ref counted as a slip. Moments later, Kim gets dropped again. Kim literally looks up at the ref and says, "I'm good, family," shaking his head no, then to put his head down, further signaling his defeat, to have the ref finally wave it off. Ippo vs Sendo 2 was the highly anticipated rematch between the two for the Japanese title. This fight dictated who is the best in Japan. Yoka vs Yayagashi was not only highly anticipated and dictated who's the best in Japan, but who's the best in the world. Kazuto Ioka, WBC champion, and Akira Yayagashi, WBA champion. It was highly contested from the first round and on, despite Yayagashi going nearly blind in both eyes due to extreme swelling. He was able to pass the test and let the fight continue numerous times. With the pressure of Yayagashi to win big in anticipation of the fight getting stopped, and Yoka having to dish back whatever Yayagashi was throwing at him, created an instant classic. This fight was open scored, so the official render of the scorecards was shared to the broadcast and the fighters' teams. This fight was incredibly close coming into the 8th. Yayagashi was up by a round on one of the judges' scorecard. Yoka up by 2 on the remainder. Nine and 10, both guys not letting off. The 11th would be as even gets to create one of the most memorable final rounds in Japanese championship boxing history. In the final 20 seconds, both fighters will let their hands go one last time before leaving the decision up to the judges. Yoka will win by a razor-thin unanimous decision. 115-114 and 115-113 on 2 of the judges' scorecards. Yoka would later become Japan's first 4-division champion. Yayagashi would end up moving up to flyweight to become the WBC and lineal champion. This fight has literally been sitting in my archives for 10 years, and this is the first time I can finally be able to use it. The accuracy of this fight is beyond crazy. Hayami is the good looker, and the only people who were attending his fights were literally a lot of women.
This crowd's so annoying.
And that would be the very same for Konosuke Tomiyama, who looks like a pop idol. Now, I really could have used the Kameto brothers earlier in their career when they had a diehard women following because they were single. But this fight here with the Nishiro and Tomiyama is freaking identical to Ippo versus Hayami. Hayami comes into the ring confident and all to receive a boxed gift from one of his fans. So in the Ippo versus Hayami fight, the crowd is practically split down to 4. You have people who just want an exciting fight. You have fight fans that want to see Ippo, a fighter they don't know fondly, beat this pretty boy up. And lastly, you have the loud, screeching Hayami fans attending the fight. Like in the Hayami fight, this was roughly the same for the Nishiro fight. You had the Nishiro fans because he was the WBA super flyweight champion, and the rest were screeching Tomiyama fans, and those supporters really made their presence early in the fight. When the faster, flashy Tomiyama floors Nishiro in the first minute of the fight, you can just hear the loud screeching noises of his supporters. In the most Hayami fashion, Konosuke turns his back from the fight and showboats to the ladies. The fight would be well contested between the two. But Tomiyama was showing his wear as the much more experienced Nishiro began to close in, and very abruptly in the 8th round. The crowd erupts in a frenzy, washing out the noises of Tomiyama fans as he gets floored to the canvas. Nishiro would finish off Tomiyama very shortly to successfully defend the WBA title. For an honorable mention, you can't really make a video on this topic without mentioning Joichiro Tatayoshi. He is the real Joe. Same font on his ring gear and his famous chain he's been wearing for many years. Tatayoshi was a cultural icon in Japan in the late 80s and 90s. He had that tough guy shonen jump manga look, the attitude and all, but had the biggest heart which resonated with the younger generation, and even the older generation. Please keep in mind, Ashita no Joe was a massive historic hit in Japan. It was one of, if not the first anime, directed towards adults, as it was originally seen as children's entertainment. And for a young talent like him to come up bearing the name Joe and show a type of attitude and flash that the Japanese boxing scene has never seen, only in a manga, and become world champion in 7 fights, breaking the Okinawan legend Yoko Gushkin's record, making his status legendary. His fight with Yasue Yakushiji was Japan's first mega fight. It wasn't just a prize fight, it was a cultural event that had the entire country talking. I even displayed in last month's video for this fight, they rolled out the earliest HD cameras to capture this historic match. Yoka and Yayagashi was facing off. The media is stating this fight was going to be like Tatayoshi versus Yakushiji, and coincidentally both guys present in the front row for the fight. In one of the greatest matches in the Mexico versus Japan rivalry, Joichiro would have an entertaining series with the Mexican legend Daniel Zaragoza. Joichiro was seen as a heavy underdog after the Zaragoza series against undefeated WBC champion Sirimanko Singwancha. The media and fans were in high doubt that Joichiro should continue fighting and having a chance to win the fight. But when it came to fight day, they all showed up to do their best and support Tatayoshi in more than likely his retirement fight. Naoya Inoue is definitely on the road to becoming an all-time great, but when you compare Inoue's fights and Tatayoshi fights, the energy and the atmosphere is so much different. Fans are loud, supporting their guy. In between rounds, there's an actual band playing, trumpets and drums sounding off. And when Joichiro pulled off the unthinkable after stopping Singwancha, the crowd goes in an absolute frenzy. You had fans from all over flood ringside at the literal ring, standing on the ring apron, chanting their guy. There's at least 40 to 50 unauthorized people in the ring and standing on the ring apron. That is one well-built ring. You see sights like that, and you realize that this man inspired an entire generation of future talent that would put Japan on the map in boxing. There is a rather insightful TV special that NHK BS1 put out called Sports Manga, where current champs at that time, such as Naoya Inoue, Takashi Uchiyama, Ryota Murata, and boxing legend Yoko Glushkin, talk about how the mangas Ashita no Joe and Hajime no Ippo inspired their careers.
リングの中でファンがああやりこうやり来て、なんかいきなり手上げたり投げキスしたりポーズ取ったりなんかいろいろやった仕草がなんか具志堅当然これも真似ている。
If you could find it, I highly advise you watch. One of the biggest matchups of the 2000s in Japan. Sakamoto is definitely the Ippo, besides the fact the man fights exactly like him. With the style of Ippo, he also shared the reserved and oftentimes shy personality outside the ring. Both had a rather dark childhood. Ippo lost his dad and was bullied. Sakamoto came from a broken home where him and his brother had to live with relatives who were incredibly bad people. During and after Sakamoto's career, he would spend his time helping the youth due to his early life.
このベルト、ほら、WBA チャンピオン。子供たちが作ってくれたチャンピオンベルト。なんかこれ見た時に、ああってこう胸が痛んで、俺がチャンピオンベルト取れなかったから子供たちが作ってくれたんだっていうね。In
Sakamoto's career, he was always on the cusp of becoming a world champion, but always felt just short. His fight with Gilberto Serrano, he would drop him twice in the first round, almost to finish him, but due to the damage to his eye by Gilbert caused by a punch, it was stopped in the 5th round, in a fight that he was winning, which was very likely his last crack at the title. The events that would take place to set up the big fight, his rival Takanori Hatakeyama would fight Gilberto next, and he would drop him 4 times before the fight was stopped in the 8th round. Hatakeyama would regain the title he lost years prior, and he would publicly announce that a fight with Sakamoto will be happening. For this fight, Ismael Salas is training Sakamoto, and Johnny Tapia's cutman, Ruben Gomez, brought in so there will be no issues with Sakamoto's eye. Hatakeyama began his training camp in LA training under legend Rudy Hernandez. Ismael and Sakamoto's camp made Sakamoto alter his guard to more than likely protect his weak eye, and giving openings breaking through Hatakeyama's offense.
No ball. Speed, no? And then ball. Okay? Double me. Go! Quick! Go! Now! Okay, ready? Go! Go! Now! Wash!
Since this was without a doubt Sakamoto's last and final chance at this level in the sport, from the opening bell, it was brutal, and the pacing of the fight not once changed. Rounds 6 and 7 were the most brutal between both fighters. Sakamoto begins to show fatigue in the 8th, and Hatakeyama finally broke through. Ismael in the corner coming into the 9th does his best to get him to wake up and get pumped up and ready for the 9th, which he would start the round a lot better. The final seconds of the 9th would break out in a toe-to-toe battle, which Hatakeyama would get the better of. Sakamoto is out of it and didn't respond to Hatakeyama's good round gesture. Sakamoto lost his balance, and Ismael quickly assisted him back to the corner. As Sakamoto supporters anxiously watch on, Ismael would give what would be his last words of motivation in the fight. Shortly after the opening on the 10th, Hasagawa would put a dagger in the fight, landing a perfect 1-2, which would buckle, then cause Sakamoto to drop to the canvas. Sakamoto's corner throws in the towel, and the fight is over. Both guys were never the same after this match. Takanori would retire a year later, and Sakamoto would take 2 years off and fight here and there for 5 more years before ultimately retiring. The history of one of the rarest moments in boxing, the double knockdown. Almost all the situations where this has occurred, the ref seems to not count both of the fighters, and one case failed to count it as a knockdown, officially ruling both fighters fell due to a slip, as seen in the Bundridge vs. Powell fight.
First punch, what? Counter right hand. That's a double knockdown. They both jumped up so fast, Flaherty did not rule a knockdown for either guy, maybe because he wasn't sure who to rule.
In this rather short video, I'll go over 2 of the greatest examples of a double knockdown where the ref sprung into action, evenly counting both fighters. Shinji Takahara vs. Sung Chung Lee for the vacant OPBF title in 1993. In the 8th round, Takahara was leaving himself way too open for Lee as he was trying to find his timing for a counter. Both landed simultaneously, creating a perfect double knockdown. Filipino ref Garcia begins not only counting Shinji but also Sung as well, making sure both fighters are up and to see the count being made. Absolutely brilliant show by the ref. Chisanda Muti vs. Leroy Murphy in 1985 for the IBF Cruiserweight title. This was actually featured in my Rocky/Creed real life moments video I made a while back. Years back, I was having a chat with an IBF official who was once a fighter and a referee back in the day. He told me this performance by Larry Hazard is constantly talked about. It really doesn't get any better than this, and luckily this fight was recorded, so it's not just a piece of old-timer folklore. It was the 12th round out of 15 rounds. Both fighters were incredibly tired, both seemed like they were just about to get one good shot out there for the win, and both guys gathered all the energy they could. They both cracked each other pretty bad and went to the canvas. Larry immediately starts counting both fighters, kneeling in position where he's visibly in front of both of them so they can hear and see his count. You can see Larry is constantly looking back and forth, keeping eyes on both fighters during this process. When Murphy rises up, confirming he's made the count, Larry moves over to continue the count on Muti, and Larry waves him off, ruling it a KO victory for Murphy. Mayorga had a pretty wild run to get to this moment. He will win the WBA welterweight title against Andrew Lewis in the rematch, the first fight being ruled a no contest due to an accidental butt. Since it seemed like he was prey because Mayorga was virtually unknown, the 10-1 betting favorite Vernon Forrest stepped up to the plate to unify against Mayorga for the WBC, WBA, and the vacant ring titles. Mayorga was shocked the world, stopping Forrest in the 3rd round. Like, take a look at this official HBO poster here. The amount of disrespect. Not a single care was given to Mayorga coming to the fight. Vernon takes up the entire poster, his name in big letters, while Mayorga's name is so tiny. Is just screaming at you, "Hey, look at me! I'm fighting Vernon! I'm his opponent!" Since HBO had quite a bit riding on Vernon, since he beat #1 pound-for-pound fighter Shane Mosley, a rematch was hastily made where Mayorga once again would finish victorious, winning by a majority decision. This win here will set him up for the undisputed welterweight unification against IBF champion Corey Spinks. Corey is the son of former gold medalist and heavyweight champion Leon Spinks. and his uncle is former gold medalist, light heavyweight, and heavyweight champion Michael Spinks. Incredibly close fight, a very smart fight played out by Spinks because Mayorga is incredibly dangerous at 147. The 2-point penalization in the 5th and 11th round being the difference maker in this fight, and Spinks will become the undisputed welterweight champion. After Mayorga was ruled the underdog in his first fight, you could say this was the first fight he came in as a heavy favorite, as Spinks came in as the 5-1 underdog.
No comprendo por qué Don Kim busca boxeadores malos como este payaso.
I don't understand, honestly. I'm a little bit confused how Don got me this bum that I have to fight this Saturday.
Mayorga was never really able to come back after this to become champion, as he was pretty much being used as a prize fighter stepping stone for big fights. Losing to Felix Trinidad to set up his fight against Winky Wright, lost to Oscar De La Hoya to set up a fight with Floyd, Mosley to set up a fight with Margarito, and lastly Cotto to set up a Margarito rematch and also a Floyd fight. After the Cotto fight, it was pretty much downhill from there, where in his final fight he'll be put away in 2 rounds by Lester Martinez in his pro debut. I think this is the only fight on the list where the winner is more affected than the fighter that lost. Thurman was put on the shelf for quite a while, and once Floyd had retired, he could finally come out and show the world who he was in the welterweight picture. In a very questionable matchup for Floyd's vacant WBC title, Danny Garcia was put against Robert Guerrero. Now, why was this a questionable matchup? Judging by the WBC ranks of the welterweight division prior to Floyd's retirement, neither fighter deserved a shot. Danny was stripped of the junior welterweight WBC title for failing to fight his mandatory opponent Victor Postal, and Guerrero is ranked number 6 by the WBC. This is Danny's first fight at welterweight, and he's magically moved up to number 2 in the rankings. Amir Khan is ranked not only number 1 by the WBC, but holds the silver title, which he had earned that position in 2014. This goes to show you having rank and holding the silver title doesn't really matter when you see a fighter who is not only stripped of the same title in another weight class for failing their duties as champion can move up and fight their first fight for the world title in a division that you're in. So Danny easily beats Guerrero, and after a non-title tune-up against Samuel Vargas, the unification is set against Keith Thurman the following year in 2017. Thurman will go on to beat Danny by a split decision, giving him his first loss to become the unified champion.
This is your boy Keith one-time Thurman, and still champion of the world. 1 time became 2 times, baby. Ain't no robberies happening tonight.
Unfortunately, Thurman would be out for the entire year due to an ugly elbow injury that required surgery. So since he won his biggest fight and never really had a break, he most deservingly went out to enjoy the finer things in life outside of boxing and went on a spiritual trip through Asia where he pretty much vanished off of social media for many months. The next time fight fans will catch a glimpse of Keith is by cell phone video from a local of him in Nepal having a fun light sparring session with Nepali soldiers, which was actually pretty cool to see. Keith will end up getting in a serious relationship and married as well in Nepal later that year. Since Keith was promoted to super status just before the Garcia fight by the WBA, he was able to keep his title since most of the weight when it comes to mandatories is pushed on the regular champion, but he was forced to vacate the WBC title. Thurman went the whole 2018 year without fighting. His first fight since the Garcia unification was on January 2019. He will start the fight quickly, but the fight will drag on to a very tough, well-contested match where Thurman won by a majority decision against number 7 ranked Josecito Lopez. This is where we get the Manny Pacquiao fight. Manny started the fight fast as always. Thurman would rally and tighten up the scorecards, but it was not enough and he would lose the title. Due to the events in 2020 and just the fact that he really doesn't have to fight anymore. In 2022, after almost 3 years, we finally saw Keith back in the ring and on a positive note. He looked very good for a guy who had been out of the ring for that long against a former title holder, Mario Barrios. I did an entire video about the tale of this fight, please check that out. This fight was for the vacant IBO and lineal titles. This was one of the biggest featherweight matchups money can buy. as far as 2001 goes, a pay-per-view fight between two featherweights headlining is unheard of. Better yet, generating 310,000 pay-per-view buys, which is a solid pay-per-view with all that being said. The 3-1 underdog Valero would beat Hamed very convincingly to give him his first loss. Hamed was never the same after that. He would fight one more time a year later, which his performance was met with boos from the crowd, then shortly after that he would announce his retirement. Gonzalez had an incredibly busy year from late 2013 to the end of 2014, fighting former unified champion Francisco Rodriguez Jr., Oscar Blanquet, a Fight of the Year nominee against WBC lineal champion Akira Yayagashi, and Rocky Fuentes to end the year off. Roman decided to have a homecoming bout to celebrate his accomplishment of becoming a champion in 3 different weight classes. Well deserved of an easy fight, but holy crap, they couldn't find a guy with a more attractive record. Valentin Leon's record is of something you'll see playing online on Fight Night. The man had 29 wins, 29 losses, and 3 draws. Well, you know, at least he doesn't have a losing record. Roman dragged the guy out to get the fans their money's worth and finished him off in the 7th round. Well, at least with this one, he had a promotable record at 29-1, but I honestly do not know what Hernandez did to earn the title shot. Berto's WBC mandatory opponent was Selak Aydin since 2009. Early in 2010, Berto was supposed to unify against Sugar Shane Mosley. The fight was cancelled due to Berto's native country attacked by an earthquake in January. He went there immediately to give aid. Again, I don't know how this works out because Aydin is the mandatory. I assume he paid his team to step aside, forcing him to follow with it. And there you go with the Freddy Hernandez fight. Like I said, Hernandez fought like he didn't belong there, and Berto put him away in the first round. Berto fought Carlos Quintana earlier that year in April, but by WBC rules, he needs to make 1 mandatory defense annually or be stripped. Due to the whole selection of opponents with Berto fights, this is the first time HBO actually called out Al Heyman.
Al Heyman's a manager, an advisor, a power broker in boxing, in case you don't know who he is. And there's a backlash in boxing, I think, at times against Al Heyman fighters because he seems to wield influence out of proportion with others in boxing. He's able to get one of his fighters an 8-round fight, practically unheard of, on HBO against an overmatched opponent, a fight usually that wouldn't be seen on HBO.
And inform the viewers, which they usually never do, about behind-the-scenes boxing.
Andre Berto for years has been criticized for not fighting top opposition, for handpicking. Andre Berto's not handpicking anyone. He'll fight anyone. That's the people around Andre Berto being careful. And so there's been a backlash against Heyman fighters, which is deserved in one way, but in another way, kind of unfair to the fighters.
Somehow, the WBA threw Duran into the rankings and a commission sanctioned this fight. Now you have a 1998 Roberto Duran at the age of 47 fighting the champion William Joppy. Duran had not a single moment in this fight and gets put away in the 3rd round. I don't know why Joppy is celebrating. That win is just as valuable and meaningful as doing a movie with Marlon Brando in the 90s. While Lewis had no shame, and he would often title these fights himself as the bum of the month, Galento, in his own right, is a legend, a person of boxing history, but absolutely no way he was going to beat Joe Louis. Just look at Joe's stoic reaction here. He's just like, yeah, whatever. I wonder what's for dinner tonight. It's almost like he didn't really want to be there. I think Zab just needed an opponent and the network needed a slot in their card to fill in, and well, there you go. HBO briefly going over Wayne's resume, and that's literally all you need to know.
Notable fights. Meldrick Taylor and Livingston Bramble. Those would have been great wins in about 1990 or 1986. But in 2002, you just shake your head and say, oh my gosh, where did they find them?
First round TKO for Zab Judah.
Is the left fight these days.
Are you ready for
That's it right there. That's it right there for sure.
There's the 5th knockdown, and that's the end of the fight.
Pacquiao had just became the WBC flyweight champion. It looks to be a stay busy homecoming / non-title tune-up fight. Todd McCallum had 7 wins, 4 losses. He won 1 of his last 3 fights. Pacquiao would drop him in the second round, then finish him off in the third. This fight was for the vacant WBA Intercontinental title. Even Klitschko was self-aware how much of a joke this matchup is. He said if he didn't beat Molly, he would threaten to retire from the sport. Klitschko beats Molly in 97 seconds. Molly was then booed by the entire stadium for his poor performance. This fight was memed right when it was announced. Zerafa was a part-time exotic dancer and a part-time boxer. He was ranked number 87 in the world. I think when a fight is such an incredible mismatch from the get-go, I believe the ref should step in and protect the fighter quicker than usual so they can fight another day. Mercanti stepped in a bit late, and the unfortunate aftermath is you have a young 23-year-old fighter being hauled off in a stretcher.
This is scary, you know, you never like to see a fighter. Michael Zerafa stretchered out of the ring. Peter Quillen wins by knockout. Frightening moment here for Zerafa.
This was on the Mayweather-Pacquiao undercard, and my gosh, this very well could be the worst undercard ever assembled for a prize fight. This was during all the hype of Rigondeaux versus Santa Cruz. You would think that would have been made since there's a large enough budget to give both guys a payday, or at least a WBC mandatory, or someone with the ranks worth noting. Nope, 10-round non-title bout against a boxer who is ranked 167 in the world. Gotta give Jose credit though, because he went all 10 rounds. This is a situation here it would have never flown by with the IBF.
Unranked by the WBC and WBA, and yet he's fighting for Danny Garcia's junior welterweight title. Now, Teddy, there are criteria and qualifications you have to meet to fight in a title fight. One of them is that you have to be either a top 10 rated contender, a former champion, or a current champion, among other things. He doesn't meet any of those criteria. So how is he getting this fight?
Can anyone say Al Heyman?
Holy crap, and if it wasn't for the media backlash, they almost got away with it. Danny Garcia was facing number 40 ranked lightweight, also he fights at super feather too, Rod Salka, and somehow this magically got approved by the WBC and WBA.
He's not rated. I wanted to show you that 15 guys in each one of those organizations are rated. He's not one of them. He's not even close. What is the sense of having ratings when you don't live up to your own rules?
Garcia was supposed to face mandatory Victor Postal and somehow got out of that. Like I said, they almost got away with this till a wave of bad press came and both organizations took a step back and made it a 10-round non-title bout.
Any other sport, there'd be an attorney general would be showing up somewhere. We have to investigate this. Wait a minute. You can't just move a guy from nowhere to all of a sudden where he's going to fight for a world title. Fortunately, in this sport, with no proper supervising, no proper watchdog, no proper policing, you can do those things.
This isn't the case of a talented champion from a division below, like in the old days, like the welterweight champion challenging the middleweight champion, middleweight versus light heavyweight. No, that's not the case at all. Danny does the obvious and knocks out Salka. The commentators somehow called this a statement being made. That is not a statement. A statement being made, doing your job as champion, fighting your mandatory opponent, and knocking him out in the fashion you did to that number 40 ranked fighter from another weight class. Now that's a statement. This is a crystal clear reason why people have protested to bring back same-day weigh-ins with fights, and why there is a hydration limit and contracts because you get awful sights like this. Gamache, who is physically smaller anyway, came in on fight day at 146 pounds. Gaddy weighed in at a whopping 160 pounds. Dude was a middleweight. Gamache put on a courageous effort, but that fight should have been waved off a lot sooner. Gaddy knocks out Gamache. According to HBO, this was the second time Gaddy had came in 15 to 20 pounds heavier than his opponent. This fight would send Gamache to the hospital for a week, resulting in public scrutiny against Gaddy. Gamache has not stepped in the ring since after the Gaddy fight. So not only Stackhouse was medically suspended by the New York Athletic Commission after failing exams due to obvious deterioration, even if he passed, he was already guaranteed medical suspension anyway for having an 8-fight losing streak. Stackhouse somehow passed all medical exams to fight Roy Jones Jr. in Florida. Besides not showing a single sign of warming up, dude was straight dry. From the opening bell, there was already blatant signs this man should not be in the ring. Jones puts him away within seconds. Duran was making his 10th defense of his WBA title against Alvaro Rojas. In the promotion of the fight, they displayed Rojas's record 26-3. Rojas himself claimed he was 46-9, but record books have him at 4-4. A lot of he said here. But Duran blew through this man like what Vegeta did to Frieza's foot soldiers.
He stands out as an example of what is wrong with boxing. The WBC has ranked him the #1 contender in the 140-pound class. Can anybody tell me why? In the past year, he's not fought a ranked fighter in any weight class. He hasn't fought at 140 pounds since March 1998.
I don't know if it's better for me to explain or the broadcasters, because this is wild how this fight was forced on Zoo and Showtime. Since Showtime was forced to air this fight, they took the time to slam the WBC, and my gosh, they really grilled them.
This is a mismatch of the worst possible kind. Well, who's to blame? We all are. Starting with the WBC for mandating the fight and the local boxing commission for licensing it. The promoter, who has no choice but to stage the fight or have his fighter stripped of his belt. But add him to the list, and let's not forget us, the television network, for showing it, and the public for coming to see it, and last of all, the fighter himself, whose self-delusion cannot be faulted. After all, he is thinking with a damaged organ.
Fans came out in full force and really tried to amp up the legend. Chavez did put up a spirited effort, but it was so clear that Zoo was keeping it easy during the first 2 rounds. Zoo really cranked it up, and Chavez could have retired any time from the fight, but he chose to stay in. Zoo was able to stop Chavez in the 6th round. Unfortunately, some angry Chavez fans began hurling objects into the ring. Back when you had to come to America early to prove you were good in the heavyweight division. This was Lennox Lewis's 18th pro bout and second time fighting in America against former contender Tyrell Biggs, who just came off an 8-round TKO loss to contender Riddick Bowe. Now coming into the fight, the question was, is this too much of a step up for Lewis? Has Lewis fully transitioned from amateurs to the pros? You know, just silly questions you wouldn't hear coming into a fight if Lewis was an American.
We'll see tonight whether he's advancing the same way, for example, Riddick Bowe has advanced.
And the record for Lennox Lewis, 17 wins, no losses against an almost ludicrously weak list of opponents. 15 of the wins by knockout.
But anyways, Lewis puts on a good show to the American critics that he is ready for a step up, completely outclassing Biggs in 3 rounds.
And there's another right hand, and that might be knockdowns are on the right cross. Lewis throws another one. Biggs goes down again, and the referee's seen enough.
Though he was credited for an impressive performance, they still found a way to put him down. Like I said, if Lewis was American, you wouldn't be hearing this for 1, and 2, he would have received much more praise for his great career.
And I'll go in the ring and find out where he's going from here.
Okay, let's do that, Larry. See if he's going to pick his next opponent by committee or who's going to pick the opponent.
Well, you're right. He told us before that he was very enthusiastic about going ahead with top-flight opponents, but that his business managers had to temper him. My interpretation of that was He wants to fight bums, and they don't want him to fight anybody that good.
So early in Golovkin's career, even though he picked up a title belt, fighting in Europe was really holding him back because he wasn't making any noise, and all the promotional energy was being pushed on Dmitry Pirog. The holdback could possibly have been because of his nationality, but it was clear that Germany was not the place for him to grow into a star. New trainer and new promoter, K2 Promotions, a promotion that has a healthy relationship with HBO. A trainer as well can have a promotional pull, getting a fighter into a network for what I will say, in this case, an audition. Abel Sanchez, who is a respectable figure in the sport, not well known by the general public. 9 times out of 10, if your training camp is in Big Bear, California, you're more than likely going to be using Abel's gym, and that is where Oscar De La Hoya did a lot of his training camps over the years. So you had 2 influential figures in Golovkin's camp, Tom Loeffler at K2 Promotions and Abel Sanchez. Since Gennady had a title, HBO rolled the dice, and he had his own event on Boxing After Dark. Like I said, this was an audition, and this man aced it from round 1 and on. If you decided to tune in that day, which most in 2012 was like, who is this guy? You were in for a treat. I was one of the lucky people to tune in to watch this. I was blown away. You couldn't ask for any better of a debut.
And he's still giving us all he has.
Oh, right hand, hurt Proxa. Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. No, the referee stops it.
Guys, Proxa.
Yeah, Thurman once fought on HBO. Can you believe that? I was lucky enough to tune in for this fight as well. Now, he was originally supposed to fight Marcos Maidana, and Maidana dropped out of the fight for whatever reason. Thurman's replacement opponent was an incredibly tough dude that potentially can make his debut a not so pleasing one. But from the opening bell, this was exciting as hell.
And there was a good left hook, and Laura wants to fight back and say, I'm just as good. He's getting ripped. Your hands go against a guy like Thurman.
After landing big shot after big shot, it looked like Thurman may not get what he promised during the HBO meeting, because this guy was not budging.
Not stopping Laura from coming after Thurman. Between Keith Thurman and Orlando, Laura staggered by a left.
Thurman in the 6th round finally gets him with the perfect shot to finish Laura off right there.
Up to hit him with. And tonight, that's what Laura's going to look like, but there he goes.
Well, maybe not. Orlando Laura has had enough. He made that clear, walking to his corner and talking to his trainer while listening to the count. He was done.
So besides the amazing finish, 10 out of 10 style points right there, the post-fight interview was just as great.
The nickname's one time. I'm looking for that knockout all the time, and I'm not in a rush to really do it. If you got a weak chin, we'll put you out early. Actually, I kind of was because of how tough he was. I thought I was gonna have to do it one more time, and we were prepared to do it. But
one more time, Keith. One more time, Thurman.
Hey, it's Keith one time Thurman, as you see. We're ready to make replays happen over and over again.
Thurman's performance was great, but that interview sold me. I wanted to see more of Thurman. HBO signed this man.
I'm looking for anybody. I'm young, I'm hungry. I'm the new thing in the welterweight division. We had to sit out for a year, so y'all didn't get to hear me. But you see the thunder that I'm bringing into the ring. I'm ready for a belt. Paul Malignaggi, I want your belt. Timothy Bradley, I want your belt. Floyd Mayweather, you're undefeated. I think I can defeat you. So we want everybody in the welterweight division, baby. We want everybody in the welterweight division. They call you a world champion. Come get some of Keith one-time Thurman.
Roman Gonzalez finally got the West's attention after his Fight of the Year nominee performance against WBC, ring, and lineal champion Akira Yaegashi to become a 3-division champion to go 40-0. Roman Gonzalez is a Taken Promotions fighter, which is a Japanese promotion. Tom Loeffler at K2 Promotions formed a partnership with Gonzalez and Taken to promote him in the States. Thanks to that, Gonzalez received a HBO deal. Roman's debut will be the co-main event to Golovkin's fight with Willie Monroe. If you know your history, most of the time it's not good to repeat it. In this case, it's a good thing. When Mexican boxing legend Ricardo Lopez was fighting in the States, he was introduced to stateside fight fans on Julio Cesar Chavez's undercard. Unfortunately then, fight fans didn't appreciate the strawweight division. Definitely the problem was they didn't promote the weight classes nor the fighters like they should. K2 and HBO did a fine job promoting his debut and the lead up, and all Roman had to do was put on a great show. His opponent was top 3 ranked Edgar Sosa. Sosa, a year prior to his fight, lost a 12-round decision against Akira Yaegashi. Though Yaegashi won quite convincingly, he was unable to do any damage to Sosa. So stylistically, this may be a tough fight for Gonzalez. Roman blew through this man in 2 rounds in the most exciting fashion. If you are a follower of the lower weight classes, this is a performance one can truly appreciate here.
Referee should stop it right now because Edgar Gonzalez is done. Edgar is out of it.
Not only this was an amazing debut, this was a huge win for the promotion of the lower weight classes that these divisions are marketable and the fighters are exciting.
Anyone care that they're flyweights? Not at all. That's some heavyweight action right there. 100%. Any questions, American boxing audience? Wow. More like a demand.
And just a year later, Gonzalez was the main headliner in front of a sold-out crowd. So this was one of the earliest fights on HBO, though HBO's claim to fame 4 years prior, becoming the first TV network to do a live satellite broadcast to show all of America Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier, the Thriller Manila. The Bonds fight was part of a 3-fight program to generate hype, demand, and the fight purse Leonard was eyeing for a potential fight with Thomas Hearns or Marvin Hagler.
So, why is he fighting Larry Bonds? And who is Larry Bonds? For Leonard, this is the first part of a 3-fight strategy. The next fight scheduled for June is supposed to be against Ayub Kalouli, the junior middleweight champion. And after that, later in the year, a big one against a dangerous opponent. Either Hearns, the WBA champion, Cuevas, the former WBA champion, or our color man tonight, Marvin Hagler.
What can I say? Leonard delivered, put on a great show. You saw everything in this fight.
And then coming back with the right hand. And Leonard going to a window. Leonard with the right hand, and another man, and has made a no contest. Spins him around, hits him with the right hand. He's now of Larry Bonds. Right above us once more. A right hand and another right, a left hand, and Bonds goes down.
Good fight.
There's a little Muhammad Ali action by Sugar Ray Leonard, leading the crowd in cheers. Another right hand, spins away, legs wobbly. Combination against, tries to fight back. Bonds is hurt now, doubles up in the corner. Combinations, down goes Bonds. Leonard hands up.
Followed up with an amazing finish to stop Bonds in the 10th round.
Coming up on 15 seconds in a round, Leonard is trying to put his man away. Hammering Bonds. Arthur Mercanti jumps in, says that's it. That's it. The fight is over.
Jones early in his career was plagued with promotional issues.
And despite a 19-0 record, Jones's career has not exactly skyrocketed the way you might have thought. For the most part, this career has taken place in obscurity. Unmemorable fights against utterly forgettable or already forgotten opponents.
Because there was a bit of a monopoly going on with boxing promotions and networks. Since Jones didn't want to sign with Bob Arum, Don King, or had a manager/trainer with influential power like an Angelo Dundee, it was a very rocky beginning for Roy, even though he was putting up highlight reel wins. But until the Vaca and Jorge Castro fight, the opponents he was pretty much forced to face because of his situation were on the level of criminal mismatches. You had a fight where a fighter who was medically suspended due to deterioration to the brain, brought in, given a Florida license just to get brutally knocked out by Roy. You had another fight that was unsanctioned by the Florida Commission that still somehow happened. And then you had the infamous Tony Waddles fight. Jones' opponent backs out at the last minute. A fighter by the name of Derwin Richards was supposed to be the replacement. The fight goes on, Roy wins by knockout, obviously, but guess what happens? That man was not Derwin Richards. The matchmaker sent the wrong guy, a 0-2 fighter by the name of Tony Waddles. Now I'm explaining this to you to give a clue how much of his early career's management was in a disarray, and why this fight is so high on my list here. So the contract for the fight was $2,000, which Tony did not know about at all. He was given $700 and found out after the fight he was supposed to be paid $2,000. The promoter and matchmaker were shortly arrested and charged for grand theft for fraud. Jones, who had nothing to do with the handling of this fight, was thrown in the same pot by the Florida Athletic Commission and suspended. This is some pretty wild stuff here, and it's a really good thing HBO signed him. This is the first fight the nation got to see Roy, and he did not disappoint. The HBO crew was blown away how fast Roy was.
Like about Percy Harris, and there he's down already. You have to remember that he's only had one fight this year. The first looping right hand caught him right on the temple, and down he went.
See Harris motioning Jones to come on in, saying, "Bring it to me. I don't fear what you've got," but Harris is in serious trouble again. And Jones, aping Ray Leonard, throws his gloves in the air before trying to pound Harris back to the canvas.
Especially throwing triple hooks like that with power. Roy stops Harris in the 4th round.
Percy Harris gives Lamar Parks all kinds of trouble. And he's a 64. Oh, the left hook landed solidly, and now there's blood coming out of Harris's mouth, and down he goes again. The 3rd knockdown of the bout. As round, he backs up and moves away from Harris. Another right cross. Harris in trouble again. Can Harris make it out of round 4? Not without going down. And Tony Orlando has seen enough.
For 2 years, Pacquiao was getting turned away left and right from American promotions, wasting Team Pacquiao's time. Murad Muhammad was the only promoter that gave Pacquiao the shot. Though they agreed to meet up at 11 a.m., Team Manny ran really late, arriving at 8 o'clock that night. Murad got to see Manny in action and was absolutely blown away by his skills. Murad saw something big in Manny.
And they gave me the opportunity to sit there and watch Manny Pacquiao. And I saw fighters falling. It was unbelievable, but I couldn't see the punch. I said, this is my kind of fighter. So I didn't want to hear anything else. I wanted Manny Pacquiao.
And despite Manny's team not having the best confidence that Murad will get Manny to where he needs to be in his career stateside, they decided to sign with Murad for 1 year.
Well, Murad, I've been here for 2 years and I'm disgusted. I mean, what could you do for me? I said, I pull miracles. He laughed about that. I said, you sign with me, I make your fighter rich and I make you rich.
Well, Murad did promise he can get what Manny needs. He makes miracles happen, and the timing couldn't be any more perfect.
4 days later, Lamomo from South Africa, his opponent fell out. I knew then it was time to move Manny Pacquiao in. So when I called the IBF, they said, wait a minute, you're only number 7 in the world. I said, yes, but if you check number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6, they're not available. So we are the lead available contender. You're right. And that's how we got the shot. So Rod Nazaro said, my God, you do pull miracles. 4 days after signing, we're fighting for a world title.
And due to all the planets and stars aligned, number 7 ranked Pacquiao by default earned a title shot to fight Ledwaba after signing with Murad 4 days ago. Ledwaba was making his 6th defense of the IBF Super Bantamweight title. This was Manny's first fight in America. Though he took the fight on a very short notice, Manny was already in fighting shape. But despite that, and since this is pre-modern day internet, Manny was virtually unknown to the public, so he was a huge underdog against Ledwaba. You can really tell that there wasn't much care about Ledwaba's opponent because before the fight started, the HBO crew couldn't get Manny's name right.
Tail of the tape for Lisanola Ledwaba against Manny Pacquiao. I'll get it right, Pacquiao.
But by round, they got it right. Manny blows through Ledwaba in 6 rounds to win the IBF title.
I had never seen him. I frankly had never heard of him, but I've seen and heard of him now.
And you want to see him again?
I want to see him again.
I do too.
What's he got to do to conquer America, to capture the hearts? I mean, he's got to win, hasn't he, this one?
He basically has to do one thing, win, and probably win big.
Does this really need an explanation here? This is pretty much the featherweight version of Hagler versus Hearns. Besides the absolutely stupid amount of hype coming into this fight, the Prince delivered and then some, to where HBO signed this man immediately to a 6-fight, $12 million contract.
Hand by the Prince, and a hard left, and Kelly's down for the 3rd time.
He's got a half a minute, and he is definitely hurt. And the fight is over. He's for real.
but according to the Guardian article from 2001, it was rumored to have been a €50 million contract. I'm siding with the Guardian's article here because in 1999, Mayweather had a contract dispute with HBO and DeBella with his 7-fight $12.5 million deal, quoted saying it was a slave contract. But anyways, this fight takes the cake for this installment as one of the best HBO debuts for a fighter. Both guys were at their absolute peak in their careers. Taylor was making his second defense of his WBC, WBO, and lineal titles. This is an incredibly ironic detail to this matchup here. Wright did not finish the fight with Vargas, which led to his defeat. In these type of situations, when the fight is close and you are the challenger, you must take the title away from the champion and finish the fight. The judges really seemed to look at that and favored Vargas.
Vargas has won this last round, I believe.
I think so too.
And it will all depend on a few close rounds early in the fight. Which way did they go?
Wright did the same exact thing despite his past experience and did not fight the 12th round, which was the complete deciding factor to the scoring. The judges ruling it a draw. Harold Letterman had it spot on, scoring the fight 114-114 a draw. And I did find it funny that the Sky Sports broadcast criticized Harold's score before the decision was made.
I was like, what is he doing? I mean, he winning on the flurries. Go ahead and fight me. I mean, he clearly throwing straight punches, just catching me. If I was him, I just would have kept fighting. That's the difference between us. I felt like if he wanted the title so bad, he should have fought all 12 rounds, because that's what I would have did. That's what I did. I fought all 12 rounds. I didn't get in there running them last rounds thinking I had to fight one. You know, I feel like it's a boxing match. You got to fight all 12 rounds.
After the Taylor fight, Wright had one last great performance against Corte and just fell off entirely after that, losing his last 3 fights. Unfortunately, he was never able to pick up a belt at middleweight. It was Ward's first night back from winning the Super 6 tournament. He challenged the light heavyweight champion Chad Dawson. This fight was at the super middleweight limit, and Dawson agreed to come down to 168. Now, I'm not sure if this was a shitpost or not. I believe either on Boxing Scene or Eastside Boxing forums at the time, someone made a post saying that Dawson had trouble making the weight and he was going to get knocked out because he was knocked out in sparring. This post received a lot of hate and everyone thought it was fake. Dawson, for almost 3 rounds, seemed to be controlling the fight well. Then Ward got situated and dropped Dawson. Dawson, after the 3rd, seemed to never get his legs back and was just trying to survive after the 6th. After being dropped once again in the 10th, Dawson made the wise decision to retire from the fight. Dawson in his next fight will be knocked out in the 1st round against Adonis Stevenson to lose the light heavyweight title. Chad, unfortunately, wasn't able to rebound, coming short in key matches that would have put him in the mix for a title shot. This matchup did a whole lot of damage to Rigo. This was the promotion and network's last-ditch effort to get people to invest more into Guillermo and get his name out there despite beating Nonito Donaire. Rigo's opponent was supposed to be 48-2 former WBA Super Bantamweight champion Puntsuat Kratindang Jim, which was an amazing choice because he's a good fighter and the style matchup was career-changing for Rigo. It was perfect. This fight was supposed to take place on the Donaire Arce card in Texas. It was going to be a very entertaining fight that would have proved the doubters wrong that he can be an entertaining fighter. Now, the most craziest thing happened just weeks before the fight took place. Puntsuat tested positive for HIV. The fight is canceled on the spot. Fast forward after Rigo beat Donaire. Rigo was irresponsibly thrown on the Kirkland vs. Tapia card. They demoted Kirkland Tapia to the co-main event, which everyone bought tickets to see that fight, really, and had Rigondeaux Abeco as the main event. This fight was an absolute mess. Rigo did put on a boxing masterpiece, but Abeco did not want to fight, making it difficult for Rigo to entertain viewers. Reason why I say viewers because, like I said, Kirkland Tapia was supposed to be the main. Everyone bought tickets for that fight, and once the main event came up, everyone in the audience left. So this fight ruined the promotion of Rigo, and the fight that would have gotten everyone talking again because it was incredibly entertaining, HBO did not want to take the risk again and put up the money to air it. So unfortunately, most American audiences never got to watching this gem between him and Amagasa.
Yeah!
and it was downhill from there. He's now officially labeled as a high-risk and low-reward fighter for promotions and TV networks in America. I'm no promoter, matchmaker, or manager or anything. Just using some simple common sense here. Seeing the potential success fighting in Japan, dude should have signed with a Japanese promoter and stayed there. For the most part, he would have been able to actually defend his belts and have an active career, and maybe would have gotten a fight with Quigg, Frampton, or Cruz in the near future. Good fight ruined by absolute incompetent refereeing. Mars got away with an anomaly of low blows. Then insult to injury, Mars throws the most blatant low blow right in the ref's field of view, dropping Abeko.
I'm sure that if the ref would have taken a point away early in the rounds, I would just quit going for the body. He went down. Obviously, he wanted the ref to, take a point away from me.
Oh, he's scoring a knockdown!
And I turn around and I see the ref counting.
Let's go. And this referee has failed in this fight.
Instead of penalizing Mares, Russell Moore, the referee, rules it a knockdown. Abeko was so angry after the fight, he tried going after Mora, and I don't blame him. I mentioned in my previous video how fighters from the continent of Africa always get the short end of the stick, and in the post-fight interview, Abeko discusses that.
I don't know why, especially boxers from Africa, I don't know why this happened to them every time. He never won him, he never do anything. And it's like I'm fighting the referee and I'm fighting him. It's like he's trying to be a racist. I need a fair match, and right now there's no anything fair. It's like whenever a boxer from Africa fighting, they always try to cheat him.
Jones in May of 2004 receives his first real loss against Antonio Tarver, who knocked him out in the second round. Instead of taking the rest of the year off and really giving your body the rest it needs, after putting a lot of stress on it, gaining many pounds of muscle the right way to make the heavyweight limit, then to immediately drop the weight within a short period of time to defend your light heavyweight title, then to defend once again 5 months later to be brutally knocked out. A lot of stress on the body, and he needed a good 9 months to a year of rest. But he immediately jumps back in the ring with IBF title holder Glenn Johnson. Despite Jones for the most part looking good in spurts, it was apparent that Roy was not 100% that night, and Glenn Johnson was just too much for him. Now in Roy's defense, he tried using the same tactics he used against Bryant Brandon many years ago, but Glenn Johnson is no Bryant Brandon. The best way to fight Glenn Johnson is the way Bernard Hopkins did, in which he completely dismantled Johnson. Johnson ends up knocking out Jones cold in the beginning of the 9th round.
Turned it up against.
He takes a right hand and a left hand, and he's on the canvas again, and he's been knocked out again.
Will we ever see Roy Jones in the ring again?
The fact that he was knocked out 2 times close together, he may have suffered, which I have from my experience, which is like a permanent little damage to the brain, which sometimes happens when fighters get knocked out close together, and they never will be able to take a punch good after that.
Reed, since winning a gold medal and turning pro, had an already closing window on himself due to an eye injury, which was causing his eye to sag. He became champion rather quickly after turning pro, and his 12th pro bout, he made 2 defenses before he was put up against Felix Tito Trinidad. The fight was rather even in the first, Reed dropping Trinidad in the third. Trinidad would take over the second half, dropping Reed in the 7th, then 3 times in the 11th. The fight was almost stopped in the corner, going to the 12th. Reed's eye was looking awful. The doctor must have known Reed's story and gave him a chance to finish the fight and urged him to protect himself. Reed finished the fight strong. Trinidad won by unanimous decision, 114-107, making the 4 knockdowns the factor of the fight. Reed will be diagnosed with a detached retina and will retire from boxing entirely the next year. Gonzalez's manager and promoter put all their eggs in the basket with Gonzalez. If he didn't win, they will dissolve financially. A Gonzalez win will get him a shot at the title. Gonzalez out-hustled Hasagawa and did enough to win the fight. I cringe every time when Michael Buffer says, before we go to the scorecards, let's give a round of applause. That's letting everyone give their final applause before they start booing. A lot of times he's about to announce a controversial decision. Gonzalez loses by a narrow, unanimous decision.
Gonzalez can't believe it. The People around Gonzalez can't believe it. Bernard Hopkins, you can't believe it.
No, I can't believe that.
Oh, look,
He's weeping. He's weeping. I mean, that was his big chance.
No, the good news for Gonzalez is he fought so well, he is now a player, and there will be more opportunity for him.
Unfortunately, that was the closest fight he came to putting himself into a position to fight for the title. Gonzalez has been out of the ring since 2017. There were talks of him coming back in a Boxing Scene interview, but with sports this year put on hold due to the virus, that may have canceled his plans for a comeback. Charles Martin becomes the second American to win a belt since Shannon Briggs in '06 under the most unusual circumstances. Before I start, let's just state here, if you are a hardcore boxing fan and like seeing champions fight their mandatories and some real wild card guys and diamonds in the rough fighters who can't get a title shot within other organizations, the IBF is your organization to follow. Absolutely lovely organization. It's a pro boxing enthusiast organization, but for promoters and TV networks, it's a freaking nightmare. The IBF doesn't play. Oh, you don't want to fight your mandatory? Strip? Sorry family, you can't pay your way out this one. IBF has strict rules and they don't bend over for no one. People who are with the IBF and continuously make title defenses with them and do not vacate the title, which a lot of fighters do right upon winning the title. 1, they want to be great. 2, they are willing to fight anyone so they can receive title fight pay. And 3, gives them leverage for making the fights they want. So back on track. Martin possibly wanted to be great or blindly went against Heyman's advice. The fight took place on April 9th and Martin got demolished in 2 rounds. Martin only kept the title for 2 months and 24 days. He didn't even get to enjoy being champion. Before 2007, WBC, WBA, and IBF were the 3 titles to hold in boxing. The WBO was not recognized by all organizations till 2007. Hasim Rahman is technically the last and final American title holder till Wilder won in 2015, and the last and final lineal heavyweight champion. Rahman was actually the interim champion, but he got promoted to be the actual WBC champion when Vitaly Klitschko retired from the sport in November 05. So he was given the title without fighting. After receiving a draw against James Toney, Rahman was making his second defense against old rival Oleg Moskaev. It took a while for Moskaev to rebound, but at the age of 39, he was able to get his first shot at the world title. For the most part, early, Rahman easily took the first 3 rounds. Then Oleg will later tie it up on the scorecards. After the 7th, it just turned into a complete struggle of offense on both sides. These guys were absolutely exhausted. I'll have to really rewatch this fight, but little 12-year-old me thought Rahman was up on the scorecards and just needed to stay up to win. Rahman gets rocked in the 12th, and he was just too exhausted to form an offense of his own and was barely able to defend himself, resulting him to be stopped in the final minute. And holy crap, he was a couple punches from being knocked out of the ring again. If Nady didn't jump in, that was about to get ugly. Though Moskaev was exhausted himself, he seemed slightly hesitant to throw an extra shot because dude was about to fall out of the ring. With Rahman losing, that turned a chapter in heavyweight boxing. All title holders are now reigning from Eastern Europe.
Where have you gone, Joe Louis? A lonely boxing nation turns its eyes to you.
All 4 heavyweight title belts belong to fighters born and raised in former Soviet republics. So if the heavyweight division is dying in America, it is alive and well in Eastern Europe. And if you think this is not an exciting time for the heavyweight division here, you'd feel differently if you were from Kazakhstan or Ukraine or Russia or Belarus.
Then later in the mid to late 2000s and early 2010s, it was East and Western Europe that ruled the heavyweight division. Cintron, who has been quite inconsistent in performances and was an underdog against Paul Williams. It was actually a perfect style matchup in Cintron's favor. He was actually landing on Paul and was giving him trouble. The 4th round, He was having his best round. Then the weirdest exchange happened. He lost his balance and hopped out of the ring. Going by the replay, he didn't hit his head at all. Most of the damage that potentially he could have taken was to the shoulder, but Cintron may had thought he did enough to be up on the scorecards. And unlucky enough, the judges did not have Cintron up in the fight, and he lost by a technical decision. Every fighter would like to start their career and end it with a win, riding off into the sunset of retirement. Middleweight and light heavyweight, great. Bernard Hopkins didn't want to do what most fighters that have retired on a win do and fight a low-risk opponent. He wanted to go out fighting the best. He picked a young, hungry, top 10 ranked contender, Joe Smith. Smith was coming up off of a huge upset victory against Fonfara, who had a big 2015 year demolishing Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and a great performance against Nathan Cleverly. It was a pretty close fight, back and forth from the two, but it was evidently clear that the long layoff in between this fight and the Kovalev fight, as well as age, was really starting to show on the old warrior Bernard Hopkins. Early in the 8th round, the unexpected would happen, and Hopkins would be knocked out of the ring in the worst spot to fall out of the ring. Upon falling, it seemed he had hurt his ankle/shoulder, and with a media member trying to help Hopkins up, that automatically disqualified him. If the fighter is knocked out of the ring, he has a 20-second count. He cannot receive any form of assistance. I don't think you can name any worse of a year in boxing than Ali Funeka's 2009 year. Funeka grinded his way through the South African ranks, winning a national title, then to later pick up the WBC international title in 2006. After a couple defenses and a huge win over Zahir Rahim in 08, Funeka finally had a crack at pretty much the whole pot at lightweight. He was up against lightweight champion Nate Campbell. This fight was for the WBA, IBF, and WBO titles. Campbell didn't make weight, so the titles were now vacant and only Funeka can win it. Both guys came in rather heavy on fight night. Funeka was at 149 and Campbell was at 147, but it seemed like Campbell benefited big time as his shots really took effect on Funeka. For the most part, Funeka did enough to barely win the fight if he didn't get knocked down twice. Campbell, thanks to a knockdown in the 12th round, barely escaped away with a narrow majority decision win.
Funeka from South Africa was oh so close. He was about a round and a half.
It's all right. All right, champ.
You did yourself proud, Ali. You're going to get another shot.
Months later in 2009, Funeka will get a shot at the vacant IBF belt that he fought for earlier that year against Juan Guzman, which this was pretty much a repeat. Guzman didn't make weight, and for the most part, Funeka did enough to win, but the judges saw it another kind of way. 117-111 Funeka on Letterman's scorecard. It was scored majority decision draw, and one of the judges offensively scored it 116-112 in Guzman's favor.
I mean, wow. Obviously, there's been some miscalculation, right?
Wow.
I mean, the judges added something wrong, right?
They taking a racer out? That's why they took so long?
Look at Funega's face, man. He's shocked. He's saying, wow. You know, this is his second time to America, and this is the same thing that happened.
But there's no question in my mind that this was a bad decision. I mean, you know, what more does a guy have to do to win a fight?
Gary Shaw is absolutely crazy about this.
Funeka would get a rematch for the title and lose this time convincingly by split decision, and that was his last legit chance of winning the world title. Gotta feel sorry for this guy. And odd enough, I noticed fighters from the continent of Africa always seem to get the short end of the stick in close fights. I mean, Corte versus Obakar is a prime example here with questionable officiating. Corte gives Carr a boxing lesson.
Starting to beat him up pretty good now, Jim.
Yeah, Carr's having trouble defending himself now.
This is the round that Trinidad stopped Carr. The 8th.
Now, he did get a point deduction in the 4th, and a knockdown that should have really never been counted in the first place. Harrell scored the fight 116-109 in Cortez's favor, and it's good 2 of the judges saw that as well, but the first judge scored it 112-112. Holy crap, that's insane. I don't know, man, but this mystery here is a real head scratcher. The first thing to point out is, this fight is in Texas. Molina was really giving James Kirkland that heat, and he raised up quite a bit of a lead. He was up on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards, so Molina gets knocked down right at the end of the round. His corner comes in the ring when Molina gets up. The ref didn't hear the bell, so he booted out the corner, then followed up to disqualify them, declaring Kirkland the winner.
The corner entered the ring, okay?
Well, this fight was in Texas, and it was on the same card as the Kirkland-Molina fight. This was an open-scored fight, so both teams are given a copy of the scorecards after round 9. This was a very close fight with Morales getting the better of Garcia. When round 9 ended, Morales' corner flips out to break the bad news to Morales that the judges scored every round but 1 in Danny's favor. All that work done for nothing, and Morales is in an odd position that he now needs a knockout.
We're losing the damn fight. All the rounds, they gave him all the rounds. Only round 1 judge is giving you. All the rounds are lost. This son of a bitch, you gotta finish him. Even if you finish the fight, they're gonna give you it if you're winning. The judges are gonna give it to him. To win by the judges, you see you can win the fight, but the judges, this is here, the judges are giving it to him.
Golota loses the first fight due to being disqualified for low blows. For the rematch, his camp was dedicated to training Golota to not throw low blows.
So the punches are going to be coming up here. They're going to be hitting him on the chin. They're going to be hitting him in the chest. They're going to be hitting him in the body. They're going to hit me there. Over here, we've taught Andrew to keep away. This is a no zone over here.
And guess what? Despite Golota clearly on the road to winning the fight, he just wants to lose. And he throws an absolute offensive combination to Bo, very low. The ref had enough and once again disqualified Golota.
He was winning the fight hands down, but because he's an idiot, he got himself disqualified. He didn't want to be there.
McCall upsets Lewis as the 5-1 underdog, giving him his first loss to win the WBC heavyweight title. 6 months following up to the rematch, McCall was in several drug-related offenses that he was forced to go to rehab. So the mental state of McCall was very suspect, and it really showed off in full display on fight night.
Oliver McCall has not returned to his own corner after that 3rd round.
McCall refused to fight Lewis. Lewis, confused and not wanting to hurt the man, didn't know what to do.
But if you threw punches at him. And now McCall's raising his... This is possibly, in a sport that is full of oddities, the strangest thing I have ever seen.
McCall begins to break down crying after a talk by the ref in his corner to try and get him to continue.
A new twist to the plot. Oliver McCall is now crying. Let's listen in.
Moments after resuming the fight, Mills Lane was forced to stop the fight.
For more installments, be sure to like, share, and if you're new, subscribe. Subscribe to Patreon for Patreon-backed projects and early access. I'm Office Honcho, and I'm out.